Well, we're just starting to lay out the stones to cover the floor, and yeah, run out of thin ones, so I'm now splitting thick ones. It's the local stone, which is a sort of pink or yellowy granite. We're not on millstone grit here, but it does split, but it needs quite a bit of oomph. So the idea is that the forge will go in that corner. Large pile of rocks there marks where the anvil's going, and then probably the press there or there. It's going to be tight, but the idea is that I can take it out of the forge straight to the anvil, or out the forge straight to a press. I'm just dropping the top bearing off, or pulling the top bearing off the shaft of the air blower. Well, it's set up, it's just a case of cranking it off now. This bearing pullers works a treat. That one's alright. The shaft's been relieved from about there, and then I've just took the rust off. Right, next job's press off that what did he call that? The armature? God knows. Press that off and let's have a look at the shaft. Right, so we're just weighing up all the parts. That is the end plate for the motor. That's the bearing that came out. That's a there's a name for it, wavy washer, and it provides the take up at the end of any float. Then there's a dirt seal more than anything. Then you've got the outside of the actual blower housing. So how it was set up originally was the shaft came through here, then you got the motor body, then you got all this paraphernalia. Obviously I'm not using the motor, but that's a very convenient way of mounting the bearing with the facilities for the thrust washer, and that actually picks up on the 4 holes. So I gave up trying to press the shaft off. It was well and truly on tight, so I've just cut through it. And what we've got now is basically, we know that that section is the blower, and that's all good. We can reuse all of that. That is where the oil seal, or this seal, ran, trapped in there. So all I need to do is basically weigh up whether I can get the bearing in there to mount on there, and whether there's enough length all in. So I've got to bugger about doing a bit of measurement. If I can't, then I'll have to make up a new plate to sit on here to hold the bearing a bit closer in. Well, we'll have a weigh up, bring it back in a moat. So we've got half the blower assembled, the other half obviously builds onto that, and we know the shaft's good that end. Based on what we've got here, we've got about 7/8 of an inch shaft stick out, which means that's barely in contact on the bearing. So I have the following options. I could machine this face down, which is the easiest machining in the lathe. Problem is the lugs are not actually that thick. Obviously by doing that, that would enable the bearing housing to go closer in. Or I could machine this face down, and there's quite a lot of meat to come out there. I could take 1.5 inches off, no problem. However, it would mean doing it on my mill, and it would mean shifting it twice because I've not got the depth on the throat. which I could rig up a post to pick up on this diameter. Anyway, a lot of cocking about. So I think what I'm going to do is ditch that bearing housing and make a steel one or an aluminium one, which will pick up on this machined face here. So that gives me the concentricity for the bearing to the shaft, and basically do it so it sits inside this edge, locates off this. I might need to put separate lugs on it to clamp it in, and then fit the bearing somewhere in this position, and then this end can be used then to mount the whatever crank arrangement I'm using to wind the thing. I think that's going to be the perhaps not the simplest solution, but it'll be the one that gives me the best options. Until I've got the shaft supported on 2 bearings, I can't actually tell how much air is going to come out of this thing, hand cranking it. So I've got to get my head together and work out the drawing for that, and then make sure I've got my head round how it all has to assemble from this end first, and then you build it back up to the other way. I just got to make sure I get that right. Well, after much head scratching, what I'm going to do is turn this section down to leave me a shoulder here, and the shoulder will provide the location for that, so that then the shaft is then trapped between the inner 2 faces of the bearings. So all of this will go down to, I think it's a 40mm bore. I'll relieve it a little bit, and so it's just a press into the end, and then the end of this I've got to work out then how I'm going to fit a coupling to enable me to fit then either a crank or some other device. Probably be a straightforward coupling. So I'm going to get this mounted up on the lathe. I need to face the end off and then put a centre in it. That way I can at least turn it between centres and know that it's spot on each time. Right, so I've got the shaft set up in the 4-jaw, and I've had to use the oversized 4-jaw chuck for this lathe because the shaft diameter won't go through my 6-inch 4-jaw. It's been a bit of a swine trying to get it all clocked in. I can't pick up on the far end bearing seat because that's actually in the chuck. This is a relief section, so it's questionable whether it's turned parallel. I'm assuming it is. So what I'm trying to do is get it to run with the minimum amount run out between there and there, and this is the section which we're going to turn down to take the new bearing. Now I'm going to zoom in, and you'll have to bear with me. So I've done my best to get this to the minimum run out, and there's about 1 thou. So each of the small divisions is just under 1/2 thou. So that's within 1 thou there. And then come across, miss the keyway, put the preload on, and that's within 1 thou. This section is where the I'll just move you along a bit. This is where the seal was located. That's within 1/2 thou. So you'd think it should all be pretty good now. So this is where we're sticking our bearing in, but this section was not covered by anything, and if you look at the finish on it, there's a much finer finish on that seal section, so I think that's only rough turned, which would explain why there's actually just under 3 thou. And try as I might, I can't get it any better than that. So I've faced it up and plonk my centre in at the end of that. So the next job is to turn back to this, turn it back to this line here. That'll be then the seat for the bearing to push up against. Bring you back when we're making shavings. I'm not taking a big cut because it's quite hard. And that's rough as a bear's. I hope if I got the right micrometer out. I think we're at about 45 and we want it down to 40. No, we're actually at 47. I'm going to swap the tool out and bring you back when we start taking some cuts. That's 40.65. We'll let it cool down and then finish cut it. So I've just polished it up a touch. That's the clearance area, and then that's sliding on. And I'm going to use a bit of bearing fix anyway. So the inner race is up against this shoulder here, and the outer race is held in the end cap. So it's trapped both ways, and the outer race has got a spring behind it to take up the thrust. So we'll just take the shoulders off here and job's a good one. So that's the shaft inserted and the bearing in position. Perhaps should have made the shoulder a little bit shorter. I've got it's 2.5mm gap between the ruler and the face, so I'm getting a 25mm thick plate cut, which would be the diameter over the top of those. I think it's 9 3/4. I've got to then rebate in to take the bearing, and I think from the 25mm I'm going to be leaving 6mm this side as the seat against that, and then coming out. So roughly I think the bearing's 18mm deep, and I've got 20mm of meat to come out to get it to seat and everything line up. That'll leave me with basically 14mm of that shaft proud of the face, but I'm actually going to bore through the plate probably to diameter of that seal there. That'll leave me a bit more meat to get a fixing onto that. Yeah, it's just a shame that now really lined up from the original shaft. Anyway, it'll work. I mean, the other option is to try and extend it, but I can't be arsed cocking about with that. What I should have done was made that seat another 2 or 3mm shallower, but it would have been getting a bit thin then. Could have lost a third off it, which is only 2mm, and 2mm ain't going to make the difference on that. Right, so we're waiting for our plate to go on there now, and once that's on I can put the other end of it up together, this end, so that I'll have the bearing at either end, mock up something as a crank, give it a wind round, and then see what sort of airflow we get out of it. And then if it's no good, take it all back down the yard. Right, well, this is the plate that I've got to use to machine the bearing holder. I've just gone round it with my centre finder. That's not bad, is it? You know, I mean, they're within 30 thou. I don't know what, I've not measured the diameter of it. It's pretty mint in peel. What I can tell you is it'll only just turn on the over the bed on my lathe, which was why we got that lathe, which ain't ready yet. So what I've got to do is come up with a method of mounting this against a chuck, so that I can then turn that diameter to bore it out through, and then turn a rebate to hold the bearing. And then I'll probably turn another rebate just to take some of the weight out of it, because it's that weighs probably nearly half as much as the whole fan unit. The plan is drill a hole through with a pillar drill, probably wind a bolt through, grip the bolt in the chuck, and then turn a rebate somewhere that I can put the chuck into, expand and lock it in, and then turn the OD and the bearing diameter. That's the plan. Bring it back when we get somewhere. Oh, bit of product placement from Randy Richards in the shop. I do like that scriber. It comes to hand very easily, and there isn't much that the carbide tip won't go through, including your finger. Right, so I've roughed off the first side. It has been an absolute pain in the rear, on the basis of the blank was a 1/16 of an inch. I know, a 1/16 of an inch too big to go over my saddle. So I've had to lock the saddle there, and then put a big long tool on, which is far too much overhang for this such a small little lathe. Anyway, I've managed to clean up the outside to get it so that it would then go over my saddle. Well, that took me 2 hours. A right pain in the arse. Even though the thing was reasonably round, the point at which the flame had been brought in to then start to traverse round had left quite a decent sized lump. So it was ding 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 for about 20 minutes till I could get that somewhat down. Anyway, so I've machined a rebate there. That's what I'll expand the chuck into. I've just got to clean up this outside edge, so I've got a nice flat working surface, and then hopefully we'll be able to get the bearing rebate cut on the other side. So I'll bring you back once I've cleaned it up. Right, so that's the plate reversed, and it's gripped on the rebate that we put in the back, and it's a bit wibbly wobbly, obviously. The OD's okay, but the front face, so that's it faced off. All the middle section's coming out, so I'll do that when I rig up for it. It is quite satisfying when you get a clean cut, and mild steel I've found not to be the easiest of stuff to get a good finish on. Ironically, this is actually the inside face. So I need to get me drawing and see what's dimensions I'm working to. Well, we're going old school to start off with. So I've got a set of stiff leg calipers. The mounting flange has got to be that diameter, so I've got a load to come off on the outside, and it's got to leave a 3/8 of an inch section here at the full diameter, and that's where the holes are drilled for mounting onto the casting. So we're going to do that first, not least because we're already set up with the right sort of cutting bit. So we'll rough it down, and then we'll get the large mic out to give us a actual dimension. We'll see how things pan out. Need to get something near, and then we'll start measuring it. Right, so that's the location flange set up. It's a nice snug fit. Bit of a pain getting it all right, because there's one machine surface for it to mate to and one unmachined surface for it to mate to, and the unmachined bit isn't perfectly round, so I've had to give that a little bit more clearance, but I wanted it nice and snug, and that's nice. So I've got to bore it out for the bearing now. Well, that's the bearing mount roughed out. The slight technical hitch, if I can get a pointy stick because it's running a bit hot. Boring bar. The end of the scroll chuck jaws, I've got just short of a thou, or a millimetre if you like. Sorry, 40 thou. Just short of a millimetre between the face of that and the face of that. And to get the full depth, which is 18mm, I need to go behind the jaws by a further 2.5mm. What I've got at the moment is enough to seat the bearing and come up to the radius on the OD of the bearing. So it's deep enough, but I've got to go back and just check some dimensions and make sure by leaving it pushed out a little bit I've got room in the rest of the housing. Otherwise I shall take off the lip, and then I've got to bury the tool in there, which is going to see that tool get crunched, I would suspect. I'm having to think about that one. Anyway, we're there, we're getting there. It's time for lunch. So that's the bearing housing completed, bought on the lathe. I've got to flip it round and just take off the burr on the clearance hole from the other side. The bearing's a nice sliding fit to the extent it's like a light tap and it's in, so I'm happy with that. So that's the plate with the bearing in the shaft and the, oh god, thrust washer, if we're going to call it, fitted. I'll show you what I've modified in a second. It's sitting proud purely on the basis of I can't hold the camera and push it up tight. We've still got to build the other side up, but in terms of how everything goes together, so that's the bearing set in its housing, which is a nice snug fit, and get it over. You can just see the wavy washer. So that's got about 80 thou compression on it, which preloads the shaft up. I've had to when I modified the shaft to take bearing on there, I centre drilled the end, as you remember. That would enable me then to refit it between centres on the lathe and turn the final dimension, which was that collar. I've took I think 3.2 something mil off, and that's to allow everything to seat up and give some compression on that wavy washer to set the bearings. So all that remains is to take this portion of the fan apart, place the plate over that position, mark through the holes, drill and tap the holes into the plate, and then assemble the whole thing, and then make up a handle arrangement to fit on the end of that. I think there's 20, basically it's 20 mil of shaft there, so I'll make some kind of handle which clamps, fixing which clamps onto that, onto which the handle's mounted. But that ain't going to be now, because I've got a promise to keep to me kids. Promised them I'd take them fishing, and the sun's out and the water levels have come up because we've had a hell of a lot of rain, so we're off to catch supper. Cheers for now. We got the thing put back together. It was a bit of a pain because of trying to line up the various sandwiches, the different plates. Spins nice and easy. I can hear that far bearing. It's if the thing looks as if it's going to work long term, I'll pick up a new bearing for it. So spinning it round, I can feel the air fuffing out of there, but I need to make up some kind of boss or something to fit onto there with a crank on it now. So far so good. Just boring out the handle for the blower. So this is the shaft which fits on the shaft of the blower and then gives you the crank for the handle. Yep, we're good on that. You can see the outline there. So the handle's there, that's on the shaft. And I've got to remove this section and then put a bolt through there and saw that line. It's 25mm thick, and I've only got I've only got I think 22mm of shaft, so I've got to face off a portion and then turn it with a bit of a boss. So I've got to remove that lot. What I'm going to do is rough it out on the lathe and then take the rest off with the shaper. This is the final roughing pass. Wound it up to full speed now, so I'm a bit more confident that it's got a good hold. We're taking off about 40 thou depth of cut. Whatever that feed is, I can't remember. Had a trip to the scrapyard this morning, run me swarf down, and whilst I was there I thought I'd have a root about for some old files or decent carbon steel. Got well, it's a compression spring. That looks to be about 5/8 of an inch diameter. got a load of files. These are cleaned up just with a wire wheel, and for all intents and purposes they feel new. I mean, that these have been used. That I don't think's ever been used. It's damn sharp. Then there's a couple of rounds and squares, and they've still got some life left in them, so that just gives me those. And then these is a fallback, so I don't think we need any more bits of high carbon steel. I even walked away from a couple of large leaf springs, and when I say large, they were 6-inch width and about an inch and a quarter thick at the thickest portion, and they're about 7 foot long, I think, and they were in a stack. I couldn't physically pick the stack up, so I figured perhaps too big.